Hi, welcome to Out and About with Tom and Sherry. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Sherry, and welcome to our next video in our Grand Mediterranean Tour video series.
One of the more exotic places I'd like to add.
Yeah, that's for sure. So this video will be about our stop in Alexandria, Egypt, on our first cruise on the Norwegian Viva.
Yep. And kind of unique to our cruise experience, we spent 2 days in port at Alexandria, Egypt, which was kind of nice. The first day you didn't have to worry about when you get back to the ship. You could have stayed out all night if you
Yeah,
wanted
and that
to.
was on purpose, I'm sure, by design, because the whole highlight of Alexandria is those that chose to and were able to get tours to the pyramids.
Yep. The pyramids were a ways out. They were what?
Like
A
3 hours?
3 hour drive to the pyramids.
Yeah.
The whole excursion was about 10 hours.
Yeah, so you needed to stay over the night.
It was a long day. Yep.
So anyway, so that is what this video is about, coming into the Alexandria port, Tom going off to the pyramids, and then our second day in Alexandria and the excursion that we did that day.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll get started.
All right, so here we are coming into the port. There's obviously the big lighthouse there. And this port was different in the sense that it felt like a whole lot more of a working port. And you'll see in the pictures what I mean by that. There was the government castle building right near the water. There was also some military ships docked there, which that was really the only place we saw military ships docked, I think. Coast Guard vessels everywhere, but military ships, not so much. So, and I thought this was neat, this dry dock. I just like stuff like that. But it looks like they would sink that. There's boats parked on either side of the dry dock tied up to it, but they would sink that, pull a ship into it or pull it under a ship, block up the ship from underwater, I imagine with scuba divers, and then refloat the dry dock, lifting the ship up out of the water, which is, I don't know, a pretty impressive feat when you consider ships weigh thousands of tons. So,
What I thought was interesting is not so much the dry dock, but your first view of the cityscape of Alexandria. And you're like, what's going on here?
yeah,
It's quite a stark view
that's
compared
true.
to all the other ports we had been to. You look at this and you're like, do people live in those buildings? It was kind of a little like, what exactly is happening here?
Yep. Yeah, Alexandria, I would say Alexandria was rough. I mean, a wonderful place to visit. I'm not knocking Alexandria, but it was rough.
We've got some more photos going forward that'll show that, but that's what I saw when I saw this view. Is like, wow, what kind of city condition is this in?
Yep, and some of the later photos that you'll see, we were driving by, and I thought, man, did they have a war here? What happened here? And
So here we are coming in. We had a balcony room looking down on deck 8 there on the Norwegian Viva, coming into the port. And again, just a stark comparison with how nice this port was compared to the cityscape.
yep, and that boat, I like that boat that's parked at the end of the pier. It was some kind of a training vessel, and then they had obviously delivered a whole bunch of cars. There was rows and rows of cars that were identical except for the color. So that was kind of neat. It was the port of Alexandria was very clearly a working port, but they had built a nice cruise ship terminal there.
Yeah, this is the cruise ship. So you're like, oh wow, this is nice looking. And I had seen some YouTube videos before we went on what the Alexandria port looks like, because Alexandria was not somewhere that I was looking forward to going to. It seemed somewhat unsafe, and I just wasn't all that interested, but more will come on that. So, anyways, but we really wanted to show this port so people could see what it looked like and get a sense of getting off the ship, how you get on your buses, and Tom can elaborate on getting to and from your tours.
Yep. And out of fairness to the discussion, I felt absolutely safe the entire time we were in Alexandria. And one other interesting thing about Alexandria, when we got on the cruise, since the cruise was going to Alexandria, they took everyone's passports because they had to process them for Egypt. So, and it took a couple days for the cruise ship company to process everyone's passport for Egypt, and they stamped a visa in our passports, and then we went and picked up our passports, which no big deal. It was just interesting.
So this was a view again of the port as people were getting off, and people were getting off early because that first day a lot of people went on the various excursions, whether they were Norwegian excursions or private tours to the pyramids. So again, this is my view from deck 8 looking down on that, because I did not get off the ship on the first day. Tom went to the pyramids and I chose not to do that.
It was important for me to see the pyramids. I really wanted to see the pyramids. And it felt like, I don't know when I'll be back in Egypt, but I really wanted to go to the pyramids. And so that was important to me to go to the pyramids. And I'm glad I went.
So they had a little ceremony there that I caught as I was watching after Tom had gotten off the ship. They did a little welcoming ceremony down below. But you'll notice you may see some people walking that have suitcases, a suitcase or two that they're toting behind. There was a tour group, not a Norwegian, but a tour group that was offering overnight stay in Cairo after seeing the pyramids. And so there were several people that signed up for that.
Yep.
So that's what you see those suitcases for.
And then this is where the buses were for the Norwegian tour groups. The private tours, we'll get to that later. You had to walk a little ways. And on Google Earth, it looked a little intimidating, but it was very well marked and not intimidating at all to find the mosque that everybody met in front of. So
this is where everybody got on the bus. As you can see, there are a lot of buses. The pyramids, if you're going on a cruise to Alexandria, the pyramid tours sell out right away.
Yep.
So most of these buses are for the pyramids. And just another view of that area where you got on. And there goes Tom off on his private tour. We could not get a tour on Norwegian for the pyramids. I may have considered going if we could have, but I'm not 100% that I would have done it. But Tom can now talk a little about. This is the route that he had to walk to get on his tour.
Yep. This is the route you had to walk into town, and it was just a nice, pleasant walk over that bridge. It was obviously shaded with the white canopies. And you can't see in the background here the mosque that everybody met in front of it. There'll be later pictures that show that. But the port area was just beautiful. And then here's the mosque where everybody met in front. And it was pretty chaotic because there was everybody there. The name of the mosque is Abu al-Abbas al-Mersi Mosque. It was just a beautiful building. It was neat to look at. And there was buses, there was taxis, there was everything there. And it was just this exciting, bustling little area as everybody found their respective excursions that they went on, their respective tours. And the tour companies were great. They were like, hey, send us a picture of what you look like. Here's where we are. And they would send a picture where they were standing. And this is a picture that I took to show the tour guide where I was. And a few minutes later, some guy walked up to me that looked like the picture he had just sent me, and he was my tour guide, and it was neat.
And that tour company was Ramses
Tours.
Tours is what he went with.
Yep. This is just a restaurant kind of commercial building. This is after getting on the tour bus heading off to the pyramids.
And you were on a different type of bus than the motor coaches.
Yeah, it was a smaller bus than a motor coach bus. It wasn't one of the huge motor coach buses, but it was a decent sized bus. This is just another view, and I like these cars, and there's more of these cars in the pictures. But it looked like, I looked at these cars, you know, the yellow and black one, and they were primarily taxis. There were some other ones. But I was like, man, it looks like they've been making those cars since the 40s. And there's dozens of them all around, and they all look pretty identical. It was just neat. And McDonald's, this is a McDonald's we saw on the way to the pyramids. Like I said, it was about a 3-hour drive to the pyramids. So we went by this McDonald's with a sign in Arabic, but then it also had McDonald's in English and McCafe in English as well, which I thought was kind of interesting. But the rest of the signs on the McDonald's were in Arabic. The vehicles overall in Egypt were neat, a lot of them. This is a cool vehicle. This is where we stopped on the tour to get snacks. We stopped at a gas station, and people who wanted to went into the gas station and got snacks. But that was just a cool looking little vehicle, and some guy came out with his snacks, got back in, and off he went. So, and it was 3 wheels, a lot of 3-wheeled vehicles, and tons of these all over the place. The little motorcycle in front, pickup bed in back, and you'd see a whole family. You know, somebody driving, and then the rest of the family in back, or they'd be filled with produce, or a lot of them were filled with watermelons, all stacked in there going to market. And I don't know, they just looked like fun. And there's some better pictures of those later on. This is approaching the pyramids in the bus, and kind of the entry plaza to the pyramids.
Built for eternity.
Yep, they were. They were built 7,000 years ago, and they were still there. And there was a lot of informational signs you could read about the pyramids and the sizes of them. And that was one thing I struggled with the whole time, was just the scale on the pyramids. I was like, man, in the photos you can't really see, you know, the photos you see here in the States of the pyramids, you can't really get an idea of the scale. And I felt like going to the pyramids, I'd get a better idea of the scale. And it was tough to get an idea of the scale because there was really no visual cues around the pyramids to do that. But one thing the tour guide pointed out was, he said, we really don't lock the pyramids up at night. We're not worried about anyone walking off with them. They weigh 5,750,000 tons. So they really felt like they were too heavy for somebody to just come walk off with them at night. So, but the sign said other stuff, you know, it said the dimensions and 20,000 workers it took to build them. And it was interesting, in the, I guess, couple months leading into it, they had just discovered, using ground penetrating radar, waterways and stuff under the pyramids, and they're kind of rethinking the way the pyramids were constructed as stuff floated in. The tour guide mentioned that they had built a canal to float stuff in, but it sounded like there was other waterways that had since been covered up to help float stuff in. Here, approaching the pyramids was kind of exciting. You know, you see this stuff on TV and you're finally going there. And before we went to the pyramids, there's a big industry of camel rides around there. You could either ride in a camel-towed cart or ride up on the camels. It had a real Burning Man feel to it for some reason. Just, you know, I guess a bunch of people out in the desert. I've never seen a camel at Burning Man, but there was a bunch of people out in the desert. And there was vendors selling the scarves and stuff. They were like 4 or 5 euros each. They were cheap, and I got a few of those. And just people trying to get by, making a living. All very nice, very friendly people. I like this camel just sitting there relaxing, laying down. Made me laugh. And the scarves that they were selling, that was some of the people that were on the tour bus with us. And then the people riding the camels. And this was, you know, we're in rural Nevada, and there was a dust devil there that we saw, and it reminded me of Nevada. Basically, it's just a real small tornado. But just these sand plains and basically the desert and the sand dunes and stuff go right over to the edge of Cairo in the background, and it's pretty much just a hard line. Dense urban environment to sand dunes. Then there's the pyramids in all their glory. And it's still, like I said, it's hard to get a sense of scale for the pyramids. There's a couple photos farther in to give you a better sense of the scale. And there's this plaza here. There's the pyramid. And the entrance to that pyramid, you could go in that pyramid, and I did go in that pyramid. That's the entrance kind of up the side. And you just, they're just like big steps, and you walk up and go into the pyramid and climb up into the tomb of the pyramid. There's a sarcophagus in there, and it was tight. And it was funny, everybody was like, "Oh, it's all hot in there," and I was like, "No, I'm an engineer. I'm pretty smart. Inside a big block of stone like that, it's going to be cool because of the thermal mass." The part I forgot about was if the thermal mass is sitting in the sun for 7,000 years, the heat works its way in there. And it was hot in there, and it was stuffy in there. But it was neat to climb up there and see it. So, and here you can start to get a sense of the scale. You can see a few people at the base of the pyramid, and then a couple of them kind of up on the side of the pyramid. But it really is. It's really quite massive. It's 500 feet tall. Yeah. So, but here you can start to get a sense of the scale.
Yeah, the people are slightly shorter than the height of the first blocks.
Than one block height. Yep.
Yeah.
It is in the sarcophagus. There was a guy in there that took your photo, and you had to give him a few Egyptian pounds to do that. But he was good at it, and he suggested some good poses, and he was friendly, and it was fun. And so you had to do the walk like an Egyptian. And there it is after I came out. This was some construction around. And for me, this was the most exciting part, was the Sphinx. This is really what was the most, for lack of a better term, visceral experience for me. And here we are coming up on the Sphinx, kind of in the very center of the picture, and getting closer to it. And there it is, the Sphinx with the pyramids in the background. That's just an iconic view, and it was neat. I got to see that. I was a little disappointed somebody left their juice box on the wall, but what are you gonna do? This was another tour bus. It was this was a much lower end tour bus. I just laughed when I looked at it. The bus had seen better days, and I don't know if it was a tour bus, but it was pretty run down. Like I said, the vehicles in Egypt were interesting to look at. And then kind of leaving the pyramids. And then day two. Day two, Sherry and I went on a tour of Alexandria in a big motor coach. But this is outside the buffet, looking out into the port in Alexandria. And again, you can see it's really a working port. So.
And I'll just mention real briefly, from this vantage point, you see this roof here. So I did not get a picture of this, but on that roof, and I was pretty much level with that roof from our balcony room that day, there was a security guard on that roof watching the ship the entire day.
Yep.
Into the night. There the whole next day, and there were two of them that took shifts on that, but he was there all day in that sun. He would move to the shade every once in a while, but he was armed. But the interesting thing, and I told Tom afterwards, and I waved at him a couple times when I'd come out of the balcony, because like I said, I was just right level with him, was that whenever they had their prayer times, he would stop what he was doing, watching the ship or whatever, and go through his prayer ritual there on the roof.
And here's the mosque again. Here's the mosque where we met for the tours a little farther back from this is kind of within the port area, which was gated off, and they had customs officials there that would check your passport and before they let you back on the ship.
So, and just to clarify, we left from the port with the motor coach on the Norwegian. We did not have to walk out to this mosque.
For the second day.
Yeah, correct. Yep. So this is just the ride. The excursion that we did was some of the highlight spots of Alexandria. I want to say it was like 2.5 hours. Yeah. Something like that, 3 hours on the motor coach. So these are photos just along the way in the different spots that we stopped.
And here's more of those yellow and black taxis, all pretty identical. There's probably a factory somewhere just churning them out.
So this was like a transportation hub. Our bus stopped in this area because on the opposite side of the bus was one of the sites, and that's coming up here. But this was like a main transportation hub where people got on all of these different ways of getting to and from the city. So there was quite a variety of options here for people, and just more of that city view from that same location. And some different types of buses there. Some a little more like what we would see in the U.S., but they were pretty rough, and they were packed.
Yep.
They got as many people as possible into each one of those buses. The first place that we stopped on the sites was the Roman Amphitheatre, and it's fenced in, and so we could not walk over to it. We had to stay behind the fence, so we were really kind of, taking pictures and whatnot through the bars of the fence to see this. But it was a neat sight to see this Roman amphitheater in Egypt.
Yep. And I spent some time thinking about it, and I think I probably said this in every video while we're in the Mediterranean, but just the way these ancient ruins are right within the cities, because people have been living there for thousands of years. And then here, you've got the pyramids, 7,000 years old. The Roman amphitheater, a couple thousand years old. And it just kind of puts into scale how long people have been living in these places.
So you can see here, the bus just pulled over to the side, and we were looking through the bars of that fence there that you see to the left, and our tour guide, she was giving information as well about it. But yeah, so the cats were everywhere we went on these Mediterranean cruises, and here are some more.
Cats and dogs, but they were friendly. They weren't threatening. It was just, I kind of enjoyed seeing them.
Yeah. And so the next spot we went to was the Montaza Gardens. So this was a real dichotomy type thing too. So again, picture, all these buildings. You're driving down these massively crowded streets with cars going in every which direction. And it took us a good, 30 minutes maybe?
It took us a while to get there, and it wasn't
to get to these gardens. Far. And here are these lush gardens that were built for the king. And they're not open to the public. They were at one time, but they are no longer. So we'll show that.
Well, they're not open to the public in the sense that you can just go there. It costs 10 euros to go onto these grounds. And they're just these beautifully manicured grounds with virtually hardly anybody there. And this was a real thought-provoking time for me, and I'll talk about that as we go through it. But just, it was a totally curated, created experience for the Sultan to live. And the Sultan had, in a lot of ways, functionally unlimited resources to build a beautiful place. And he did. And one of the first stops we went there was this fancy resort. And we had a beverage there, and we kind of walked around at this city resort. But if you'll notice,
there's nobody there.
It's pretty abandoned. Yeah.
Nobody.
Nobody.
There were a couple workers who were probably there because we were coming there.
Yep.
But there weren't people lounging out there. This is a resort area with hotels and whatnot.
Couple workers, yeah.
And then this bridge was just,
neat.
very elaborate bridge over to this other area of this lagoon type spot where this had been, obviously, as Tom said, kind of curated for this experience. So it would be curious to see photographs of this when people are actually there. So yeah, it was just like an abandoned resort.
It was like, where are the people? And we went there and they had snacks and stuff, and there's the bridge kind of into this lagoon. But it was striking.
And beautiful views. I mean, that was the other thing. You're looking at this going, where are the people?
Yep.
But the average person would not, in Alexandria, would not be going here. These are people who are, have some money.
Yeah.
And tourists.
Yep. Here's a couple workers. They were doing some landscaping, I guess, down there. But I enjoyed looking at them, just the joy in their lives. And there'll be more about that later.
So the next spot we went over to was a botanical garden, which was really nice,
and
very
this was
pretty.
all on the grounds of the Sultan's Castle. Yeah. Just, again, very curated, very nice.
But no
nobody
people.
there. And it cost 10 euros to go there. So for us, not a lot of money. We saw one family picnicking on those grounds the whole time. But yeah, beautiful bushes. And in here, this beautiful greenhouse with all these bushes, everything was in pots. And I think what they would do when a plant got looking shabby outside, they would swap it out for one inside. And in an attempt to, in my mind, create beauty. You just see more of the plants, some orchids. It was nice in there. It was humid in there. It was cool in there. There's a beautiful woman in there.
Oh. But the little ponds, and it was a nice little space. I think there might have been some butterflies in there too.
There were some butterflies in there.
Yeah, so it was a nice little spot to walk through and whatnot. And then we went over to the palace from there, which you could not go up to in our case, but you could buy tickets, I think, to go in there as well. Because we saw a couple people walk in, but they were not part of our group, but that's as close as we could get.
And that is the Sultan's Palace, and these were his grounds. And this is what really struck me, was the Sultan had a balcony outside his bedroom window because an alarm clock wasn't good enough for him. He had to have an orchestra go out to play a song for him to wake up to. And so here's a person with really unlimited resources trying to create all this beauty down to, a live orchestra to wake him up. And what kind of occurred to me, and Sherry and I had a pretty long conversation about it, was he was searching for beauty, but he couldn't get it. But later on, there was a real thought-provoking area. So stay tuned.
And nobody lives there now. Nobody goes there. It's just, like I say, you can pay to go in, like touring a mansion or something. But this was on the opposite side of the gates to the palace is this beach walking area. And there was a few people, but again, completely empty.
Very few people, yeah. It turned out I didn't get a good picture of it, but the Sultan's favorite thing to do, there was a simple white wooden chair down on the beach, and he liked to sit in that white wooden chair and fish. And so with all those resources and all that, call it curated beauty, what he really enjoyed was go sit quietly, peacefully on a beach with his back to all of that. And a friend of mine has a prayer, help me to see the beauty within me, around me, above me, below me. And that's what that's what struck me was, if I can see the beauty around me just every day, I've got no need to try and curate beauty, and my alarm clock is good enough to wake me up.
So then we went over to this train building for this train that was gifted to him by was it Ferrari?
I think it was Ferrari, yeah.
That was built by Ferrari and given to. It was in this little building.
It was in this, it's a very neat train, Art Deco.
Yeah.
I loved the train, and the inside of the train was as Art Deco as the outside, and
I
all
think
been restored.
He used it once.
He used it once.
And then I think it got stored in this building. But another split photo here too. You see the homes, the apartments, right behind the building.
Yep. Yeah. So even with this train, didn't mean enough to him to use it all the time. And then there was these playgrounds and kids' swings, again, unused.
And these playgrounds, this was a photo that I took. What caught me about these playgrounds had to have been, 40 years old or more?
They were old.
The equipment was just old. It was stuff that reminded me of playgrounds, what they would look like now when I was a kid going to playgrounds.
Yep.
They were not new equipment, nothing like that. Again, and you're still on these palace grounds. Then over to the side, there was more of a little like carnival type playground area there. So obviously that's newer, but yet that older stuff was there too. It was just an interesting split of those. But again, nobody there.
Nobody there.
Just us, tourists.
Yep.
On a bus. And so we left that area and drove back towards the center of Alexandria, past the port, over to our next location. But we go by this Corniche, which is the seafront walking area. And this place that's where all the people were.
That's where the
local people were all in this area. And you'll see that in these photographs.
Yep.
So these shade lounges and everything are all set up all along this walkway. And you'll see families just sitting on the sides, sitting down on the beach.
Just common working people out enjoying the day, enjoying the beauty that was there.
Remember that on the opposite side of the street are these dilapidated concrete buildings with no windows.
Yep.
Where people are living.
Yep.
But yet they can walk across the street and be on the beach.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's some photos of those later on in the video, so stay tuned.
And this was wide open traffic here, but that's going to change very quickly.
Yep. Another one of those yellow and black cars. Who knows? Maybe it was the same 4 cars we saw 100 times. I don't think so. I just enjoyed the people, looking at the people here, and I don't know, just the vibe and the energy in through this was
very obvious that they were really enjoying themselves being on the beach.
Yep.
You could see them laughing, like the kids were playing. They really were enjoying themselves there.
And it felt like authentic Egyptian culture there. You know, the little fishing boats out in the harbor. And I mean, these fishing boats, were very simple. And this was authentic Egypt right here. I felt like nothing curated. And it was interesting on this tour. We had a police escort the whole way who had his lights on the whole way. And I think a big part of his job, the traffic in Alexandria was just crazy. And people use their horns more than they use their turn signals. And, they say the lane lines are just a guide. I'm not even sure they were a guide. Traffic was just crazy. And what would happen when the traffic got heavy, the police car which was normally following the bus, would pull out in front of the bus, and he would kind of clear the path for the bus to drive through, because that was a full-size motor coach.
Yeah, it was, and there were no lanes. And as Tom mentioned before, we had a police escort on the front and the back.
There was one police car,
Okay.
and he'd be behind us a lot of the time, but when the traffic started getting dense, he would pull up. I suspect that's him off to the left of the bus. That car, you can just see the corner of. There he is. And the bus driver was very skillful. He was able to drive through that. And he was pretty good with his horn. And here's some of the Egyptian buildings. I mean, that's where people live. And I was frankly a little uncomfortable about taking pictures of it at first. But I thought, this is Egypt. But that was another thing that we got warned about on the tour the day before. Don't say anything bad about the leader of Egypt. So it's illegal. But a lot of these buildings were missing windows, and not just missing the windows, but missing the window frames and the window hardware. And it was like they took them and used them somewhere else.
And it looked like, some rooms looked like people lived there. Some looked like they didn't. And it was really hard to tell for sure. And some floors had been fixed up and other floors hadn't.
Yeah. And some units had been fixed up and others hadn't. But they were rough. And a gas station, beverages, and people hanging. I mean, this is kind of universal throughout the Mediterranean that we noticed, but it was really striking here. People don't use dryers as much as they just hang their clothes out to dry. And there was a lot of clothes hanging out these apartment windows here, drying. Look at all the satellite dishes up on the roof.
Yeah.
So,
that's kind of universal.
Yeah.
So we are headed over to another area of the main spot, and this was one of the stops that we made in order to see this particular sculpture. And it was the seabird or flying sails was the name of the sculpture. And Tom really liked that.
I really liked the sculpture. I liked they were bulls or something. You could see them in the left-hand side of the picture. It was just a very neat, a very vibrant sculpture. It was modern, yet classical, I guess.
Yeah, there's a bull, but then there's a person, arms, legs. It was hard for me to interpret what this was.
Yep, but you get to the back and it becomes more abstract. But it was neat. I enjoyed looking at it.
So we were heading over to the Qaitbay Citadel. Qaitbay Citadel. So you can see that in the distance there, a little bit off to the left as we were getting a little closer to that. And again, people continuing to be on this ocean walk area. And this is at the area after we got off the bus. This was a little area where they had the small little ships, boats. I didn't see anybody riding in them, but I guess, I don't know if these were like little taxi boats.
Taxi boats are, I think they were fishing boats, okay. Probably.
Okay. We did not go into the Citadel. We had 15 minutes, I think.
Yep, we didn't
stop
have a whole
here,
lot of time here.
To be able to go in there. So we had 15 minutes at this location, so there was not enough time to tour the Citadel, but it was interesting to walk around it, and they're obviously doing some restoration work on it. And I want to say it was like 10 euros or 10 or
10 or 15 euros.
It wasn't expensive, but we simply just didn't have the time to go in there.
And we looked in through the door, and there wasn't a whole lot really to see in there. It was like, let's just walk around here and look at stuff like this sign was neat. I couldn't read it.
And this was after you paid the entrance to go in and walk through the place. So our last stop here was headed over to see a mosque, and this was on the corner. Lots of business activity.
Yep. There's a whole lot of business activity. And one of those pickup motorcycles, for lack of a better term. But it was neat, this ice cream shop on the corner with the red sign. The bus pulled up right in front of it, and the two guys working in the ice cream shop were just excited because a bus stopped in front of their ice cream shop, and I think they felt like they were going to sell a lot of ice cream, which they probably did. But it was just neat, you know. The whole place was neat. I loved Alexandria.
So we just walked from where they dropped us, the bus stop there. We all got out, and then we walked over to look at this mosque. We could not go in it. It was under a state of restoration, but we did get to walk over there.
And it was a beautiful mosque. Just the craftsmanship on the mosque was neat to look at. You can kind of see it there. Just the carvings on the domes on top is just, it reminded me of an ivory carving.
So then we're heading back to the ship, and our particular tour did not have a stop at the new Alexandria Library, but the shiny sloped that you see in the picture, about center of the picture, a little to the right, that's the new Alexandria Library. And again, we did not stop there, but we did get a photo, and we got a photo here a little closer too. This is part of that library complex there.
And then this, I guess, I don't know, farmer's market, street fair, open air market, whatever you call it. We saw this on the way back, and yeah, they were just selling all kinds of different stuff there.
And this was pretty much the whole way. I mean,
Yeah.
There were these little side streets where it was more concentrated selling by different vendors. There were some shops that were open, but it was pretty much this way all the way going back, that all the streets had vendors on them.
Yep.
And then we got back to the port, and just a few pictures to show you on the opposite side of the entrance to the port is, as Tom's been referring, the working port. So we've always enjoyed watching some of the activity of moving cargo and whatnot, to see all of that. So we sat over on deck 8 on the side and watched this for a little while. And that was our rest of our Alexandria experience. Just observing all the goings on of how busy this port was.
I think overall, I would say Alexandria was an exciting, bustling city that was, for me, somebody that lives in the United States, it was very exotic as well.
It was interesting to see. I really evaluated from my perspective, comfort level and whatnot, what I was interested in doing and not doing. And Tom and I, like I say, decided to do separate things on the first day. And I stayed on the ship, enjoyed my time on the ship. Tom enjoyed his visit to the pyramids. And then day 2, we did our activity together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I think most stops for Alexandria are an overnight, simply because of the time involved in going to the pyramids.
Because of the distance, yeah. If you want to go see the pyramids, I would I don't know. You'd have to decide. Do you do the overnight tour and go to Cairo and spend the night and spend longer at the pyramids and miss seeing Alexandria? I think at the end of the day, I like the way we did it.
Yeah, because I did want to see Alexandria. I did want to see. I mean, it's so historic, but I just wanted to see what that city looked like.
Yeah.
And what, and get a, somewhat of a feel for, the area. And I felt like I got that. I would not choose to go to Alexandria and stay in and of itself. That would not be, would not be something I would be comfortable with. I would be interested in going to Cairo on a trip just by itself, a curated tour of Cairo, Egypt, with visiting the Egyptian Museum, going to the Valley of the Kings. Again, on a complete tour group would be my comfort level. So.
And Sherry, she's got a different approach to this stuff, different interests. Sherry's a history major, and so she enjoys kind of the history, the museum stuff. She's an archivist in a museum, and she enjoys the history, the museums, and I like to be in the spaces. That's my thing. So that's why going to the pyramids was important to me. And Sherry was like, Alexandria is really the more important thing to me because it's historically it's much more significant than Cairo.
Yeah, I mean for different reasons and whatnot. But again, there was a safety component for me and finding my comfort level, but it worked out very well for us. We both got to do what we were comfortable doing and what we wanted to see, and it worked out really well.
Yep. And I felt perfectly safe the whole time. I felt like I had to be wary and conscious of my surroundings, but at no time did I feel like I was in any sort of danger.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyways, if you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more stuff like this, hit subscribe. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments. We answer them pretty quick. We really try to answer questions pretty quickly. So.
Yeah, well, thanks for watching, and I'm not sure what our next one will be. I have a feeling it might be Santorini, Greece, I think is the next video we'll be working on. So keep an eye out for that. But thanks for watching Out and About with Tom and Sherry, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Ma salamati
Is goodbye in Arabic.
Yep.
Okay.